I realized it was time to turn things off and exit the master control booth before someone stepped in to stop me. If I responded quickly enough, I could disengage the live assist mode and restore the system to full automation. The local television viewers had seen more than enough in one night. Once everything was back to normal, I'd be able to leave and get a much-needed drink. Trust me, I was really desiring one. Of course, I was well aware that there would be hell to pay later, with Laura at home, the general manager at work, and possibly the FCC breathing down my neck. The implications were unavoidable, but at the time, I couldn't bring myself to care. I felt like I was already locked in a bad circumstance, and all I wanted was a cold drink. I went straight to Frankie's on Roswell Road, the local's favorite sports bar, and ordered my first round. Sitting there, I sipped my beer and watched the final minutes of Monday Night Football, downing a couple more as the evening wore on. The bar was humming with conversation, and I could tell what everyone was talking about. I didn't hear everything, but I knew my little prank had sparked a lot of debate. Fortunately, no one drew me into their conversations, so I sat alone, silently sipping while watching the Saints annihilate the Falcons. By 10:30 p.m., I was on my way to being numb. The game was ended, and my team had lost 23-3. The Saints had performed as if they had something to prove, probably because it was their first game back in their home stadium following the hurricane. They thoroughly outperformed the Falcons from beginning to end. Our station televised the game with ESPN because Atlanta was one of the teams engaged. After a time, I asked the bartender if I could park my car overnight in the lot. He agreed, stating it was prudent given my situation. I realized how out of it I was. He even called me a cab because I lived nearby in a nice neighborhood in Sandy Springs. It would not be a long drive home. So that was how the night ended. But to give you the complete picture, I should probably start at the beginning. My name is Daniel Brooks, although most people simply call me Dan. I work as a broadcast engineer at WBRC, a CBS affiliate in Atlanta. I graduated from MIT with a master's degree in electrical engineering and computer science, as well as another degree in broadcast technologies. I'm not only good in my job, I'm really good at it. I've been in the profession for more than 20 years, working at numerous TV stations throughout the East Coast before landing in Atlanta 5 years ago. If you're curious about my appearance, I'm 46 years old and have dark hair that has begun to gray at the temples. I've never been one to conceal the gray, though I do occasionally touch up my mustache to keep it from looking too aged. I'm 6 feet, 3 inches tall, and weigh approximately 190 pounds. At least this is what I tell myself, though I haven't stepped on a scale in ages. I'd think I'm fairly attractive, not Hollywood handsome, but not terrible for a man my age. I'm not familiar with the younger celebs, so comparing myself to one of them doesn't make sense, but let's just say I don't look like someone who would appear on the cover of a romance novel. Now, about my wife, Laura. She's been by my side for 22 years, and we have 2 kids, Jessica and Rachel. Jessica is married now, and Rachel is completing up college. Laura is approximately 5 feet, 5 inches tall, and weighs no more than 135 pounds. She has beautiful blonde hair that falls to her shoulders, and she looks stunning. She has the kind of looks that attract attention wherever we go, and people can't help but admire her. At least that is what I used to believe. Laura has served as Reverend Jim Fisher's secretary at our church for the past year and a half. And this leads me to last Friday. I had some extra time during lunch and decided to surprise Laura by bringing her out to dinner. Since it was raining, I parked near the side entrance to the church offices. When I arrived, she was not at her desk, so I decided to walk in anyway. That's when I overheard Laura speaking with Pastor Jim in his office. She was enthusiastic for Monday night, stating she was looking forward to spending time with him while I covered the football game. I froze. I couldn't believe what I heard. Their talk quickly became intimate. They discussed renting a room at the La Quinta Inn and how they couldn't wait to be alone together. My stomach turned inward. A surge of wrath and disgust washed over me all at once. I wanted to storm in and face them right away, but something stopped me. I was afraid I'd lose control and do something I'd later regret. Instead, I discreetly slid out the same way I had in, hoping no one observed me. There were security cameras around, but I entered through a side entrance that most likely wasn't being monitored. I drove away. It felt like one of the most difficult things I've ever done. I was too disturbed to concentrate on anything else, so I called my station and informed them that I was not feeling well and wanted the rest of the day off. I felt returning home would give me some time to think things over before Laura returned about 4 p.m. It was painfully obvious that Laura was having an affair with Pastor Jim. In my opinion, he was no longer Reverend Jim from now on. Jim was a bastard. That seemed like a more appropriate title. I had so many questions going through my mind. How long was this going on? Why did it start? What have I done to deserve this? Some individuals may want to remain in the dark, but I do not. I needed answers. I needed to know everything about their affair, when, why, and how. I couldn't just let it slip. Laura was not who I assumed she was. The marriage I thought was solid was plainly not in her sight. I made up my mind right there. I would get to the bottom of it and deal with both of them appropriately. I was not about to give in and play the fool. I was going to tackle this head on. When I came home, I prepared a pot of coffee and went out to the patio to clear my mind. The weather was pleasant, and the fresh air helped me relax while I attempted to make sense of things. Deep down, I knew I'd figure this out sooner or later. I simply needed to relax myself first. I will not lie. I cried a few tears that afternoon. It was difficult not to gaze. I've never believed I owned Laura or had any claim to her body, but knowing she was having an intimate relationship with someone else was stomach-wrenching, especially after committing to me on our wedding day. Perhaps some people don't take their vows seriously, but I did. I assumed she did too. And when something like this happens, it disrupts your entire belief system. You begin to wonder if you've been naive your whole life to believe in love, fidelity, and the purity of marriage. The hardest aspect of being duped isn't only the treachery, it is losing faith in someone you thought you know. You can't believe anything they say or do anymore. The fundamental core of your relationship crumbles, leaving you vulnerable and terrified. I am not a little guy. I'm 6 feet 3 inches and weigh 190 pounds. But in that moment, I felt little, defenseless, and terrified. That is how badly a cheating spouse can hurt you. With a few lies, you will be reduced to nothing. As I sat there, I tried to keep my emotions under control and think rationally. Memories of previous doubts came in. Little things I'd overlooked over the years came flooding back. Each one hit me harder than the last. How could I have been so blind? The answer was simple: trust. I had absolutely trusted her, and now that trust was broken to shreds. And the minor doubts I'd overlooked grew into a tremendous load that weighed me down. I needed answers. Real answers. I wanted to know why she did it. How long had this been going on? Where they met? How often? And if anyone else knew about it? My trust in her had vanished, but my desire to discover the truth blazed greater than ever. I couldn't keep pretending. Everything was fine. My marriage, as I understood it, was a deception. Before confronting Laura, I wanted clarity. I wasn't prepared to face her without some definite information. At 3 p.m., I grabbed my keys and departed, not wanting to be at home when she returned. I drove into town, stopped by the station to get a few supplies for the following days, and spoke briefly with my boss. I mentioned that I needed a few days off to tackle personal affairs, and he was pleasantly understanding after that. I went to Frankie's again to kill time before returning home. Around 5 p.m., I called Laura to inform her that I would not be home for supper. Her remark was characteristic of Laura. She seemed annoyed and stated that she had plans for the evening and would be upset if I did not show up. She warned that the plans will be terminated. Yes, right. As if I'd want to be her way of releasing the tension she'd built up during her time with Bastard Jim. Let her sort it out on her own. I played along by saying, "Stay excited for me, sweetheart." I will take care of you when I return. I knew it would rile her up. Her response was sharp. Do not count on it, pal. If you believe you can treat me this way, you will be without me for a while. Perfect. That is exactly what I wanted. There was no way I was going to touch her until I knew what was happening, and perhaps never again. When I arrived home about 10:30 p.m., I was very drunk, but coherent enough to see the bedroom door was closed. I couldn't help but smirk when I knocked, assuming she was still awake. Okay, if that's how you want it, I called out. Don't expect me to meet your needs, just endure. Then I went straight to the spare bedroom, knowing that my actions would irritate her. At the very least, it saved me some time. I would not have to explain why I didn't want to be near to her that night. When I arrived the next morning, she was already sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. The tension was high, and her look was as cold as the air in the room. If I hadn't known about her affair, that expression could have made me uneasy. Instead, I flashed her a smug smile and said, No need to get up and make breakfast, honey. I will grab something on my way to golf without waiting for a response. I grabbed my clubs, exited the kitchen, and drove away. She didn't take long to call me. I saw her name on the screen but left it to voicemail. A few minutes later, I checked the message. She was angry. You're a jerk! How could you do this to me? Come back here right now! Bastard! No! Laura. That title belonged to Bastard Jim, not me. He was the one who truly deserved it. I was not the one sneaking around behind my spouse's back. I had no intention of actually playing golf. It was simply a cover to buy some time. Instead, I headed directly to my former church. Did you honestly expect me to go through another sermon from Bastard Jim? After what I've learned? It was early, so I assumed the place would be deserted. And I was correct. Laura worked there, so we had a key to the building. I let myself in and went directly to the offices. My goal was simple. Install remote micro cameras and mini microphones in Laura's and Jim's offices. It did not take long to set them up. I hid the transmitter beneath some old hymnals in the supply cupboard across the hall, where no one would notice. The receiver was connected to my car's electrical system, allowing me to listen in on their discussions while they were at their workplaces. I wasn't expecting much to happen straight away, but I figured a few days of surveillance would provide some useful information. I searched Laura's desk after double-checking that everything was in working order. Nothing stood out at first, but then I saw something on her calendar. A large red asterisk indicates Monday. It matched exactly what I had heard last Friday. I made a mental note to plan for that. Next, I visited Pastor Jim's office. I didn't find anything damning at first, but just as I was about to give up, an idea struck me. Inspired by my surroundings, I started to search through the filing cabinets. Perhaps there were invoices or records that could shed light on church expenses related to their event. Sure enough, I discovered precisely what I was looking for. Receipts from Roswell's La Quinta Inn. Some dated back to late 2005, while others were from spring 2006. Knowing that lingering might put me at risk, I immediately copied the receipts and carefully returned everything to its proper position before departing. Afterward, I drove to the golf course and parked in my normal location. I strolled into the clubhouse to ensure that I was spotted. Then I found a booth and sipped a Sprite for a few hours while going over the receipts. My blood boiled as I examined the dates. Both receipts from late 2005 were dated Monday, which corresponded perfectly with my trips to CBS headquarters in New York for conferences. What truly incensed me was Bastard Jim's audacity in charging the church for those motel rooms, claiming they were conference room rentals for meetings. The man had been sneaking off with my wife to a cheap motel, and I had unintentionally helped pay for it with my church payments. That was it. No more donations for me. I was not going to donate another $1 to fund this shady little affair until they provided further evidence. I knew I could take them both down. I was certain that this had been going on for almost a year, if not longer. In fact, I began to think that their relationship had begun before Laura started working for him. Looking back, it makes sense. Laura had previously worked as a receptionist at Telfer Corporation, which was a decent position, but when she abruptly switched to working at the church, she claimed it was because the location was closer to home, and the job allowed her to serve the community. She even claimed the pay was comparable, but now I saw it for what it was. She was not lured to the job itself. She was enticed to the benefits that come with being close to Jim. My rage intensified with each passing thought. How could I have been so blind? How could the lady I had loved and trusted for years betray me so easily? I wasn't going to let it go. I was determined to make them pay for what they did. Determined to delve deeper, I returned to my car, took out my iPod, and set it to the frequency of the receiver I had hidden in the trunk. I studied the data and instantly recognized Scoundrel Jim entering his office. I overheard him dialing a phone. Unfortunately, because I hadn't managed to bug his phone directly, I could only hear his part of the conversation. Nonetheless, it was better than nothing. "Hey, Laura. I'm at church right now. Did you call? What's got you all worked up?" he said. There was a pause, and I believed Laura was responding. Then Jim inquired, "Oh, seriously? Has he done this before?" Another pause. He continued to press her. "What do you believe triggered him this time?" After another pause, he continued in a more serious tone. "You don't believe he suspects us, do you?" After another period of stillness, he chuckled and added, "All right then. You can either make amends or respond to him on Monday night." He hung up and sat silently for a bit. Right as I was going to turn off the receiver, I overheard him saying something beneath his breath. I made careful to document it in case it came in handy later. With that, I went home, fully expecting a cold reception. As soon as I arrived, I began doing tasks, such as mowing the grass and cleaning out the basement, in order to keep my mind occupied and avoid talking to Laura. She spoke very little, but the tension in the home was evident. It was only a matter of time before she ended her silence. At supper, she finally snapped. "Dan, what is going on with you lately? Why are you behaving like this?" she demanded. "I did not hesitate, Laura. Given that you locked me out of the bedroom last night, you should be asking yourself what's going on." I maintained a calm but forceful tone. "I don't go out with the men very often, and when I do, you throw a tantrum. You are the one that is acting inappropriately in this situation." Her irritability boiled over. "Damn you," she spit. I met her look without flinching. "Is this how a decent Christian woman speaks?" I inquired, my tone dripping with contempt. "Your behaviors don't precisely represent the values you preach about." Her expression said it all. Guilt. Plain as day. She may have felt she was skilled at hiding things, but at that point, anyone could have seen through her. To her credit, she swiftly recovered and excused herself from the table. But I knew that when it came time to confront her with the whole truth, she wouldn't recover so easily. Later that evening, she came into the family room where I was watching Fox News, hoping to get some fair coverage. Her eyes were slightly puffy, as if she had been sobbing. We didn't say much after that. When I was ready to go to bed, I just walked down the hall to the spare bedroom and turned in. A few minutes later, she approached the threshold and stood there. "What is wrong?" I inquired, not bothering to hide my apathy. "Aren't you going to bed?" she asked hesitantly. "Nope," I responded plainly. "You made it clear last night that intimacy is out of the question, so I might as well sleep alone and get a decent night's rest without waiting for a response." I turned away and she soon departed, crying. Honestly, I didn't care. The following morning, she roused me up at 8 a.m., already dressed for church. "Are you going with me?" she asked, attempting to maintain a pleasant tone. "Nope," I said it again, smirking. "You go ahead and perform the role of the ideal church lady. I'm staying at home and enjoying a quiet day." Her expression faltered slightly, but she recovered and walked away. I saw sadness in her eyes. Good. She was beginning to suspect that something was wrong. After a time, I heard her car drive out of the driveway. She attempted to start a discussion with me later that day, but I was not in the mood. I brushed her off and told her to leave me alone. That very much concluded Sunday. We each stayed to ourselves, retreating to different corners of the house. When? I left the house on Monday morning without seeing or speaking to her. My phone vibrated as I was about to leave. Laura's voice on the other end was trembling and teary. She apologized. She told me she loved me and asked for us to work things out. I kept my tone neutral. We'll discuss it when I get back tonight. I mentioned this before ending the call. I then notified my supervisor that, although I was still taking the day off, I would be available to do the Monday Night Football show as scheduled. He seemed happy and inquired how I was doing as well as could be expected. I responded with a half-hearted smile. My next destination was the La Quinta Inn in Roswell. Once inside, I approached the front desk, where a young man named Ryan was working without delay. I came clean with him. I suspected my wife of cheating, and there was a high chance she'd be at the motel that night with someone else. At first he appeared skeptical, but I made him an offer. If you let me use a microphone in the room to record their chat, I'd give him a couple of Falcons tickets for the next game. He thought about it and pushed back, requesting 4 tickets. I consented without hesitation, knowing I could easily navigate them through the station. With that, he gave me the key to the sole available Whirlpool suite. Ryan had no idea I had more in mind than a microphone. I planned to install a few of tiny cameras, identical to the ones I had in the church offices. I even installed a bug in the phone line to record both sides of any calls they placed. After carefully situating the gadgets, I performed a fast test. The audio was crisp, and the camera angles provided a good picture of the bed and Whirlpool. Once I was satisfied with the arrangement, I double-checked that everything was properly hidden before locking up and returning the key to Ryan. I gave him the promised tickets. Thank you, Ryan. I hope everything goes as planned. Enjoy the game. With plenty of time before the game, I set out to complete a few vital duties. My first trip was the bank, where I took out half of the funds from both our checking and savings accounts and turned them into cashier's checks. From there, I deactivated our joint credit cards to avoid Laura's unexpected spending. Next, I called my broker and set up a meeting to discuss dividing our investment accounts. He told me that everything would be ready by the time I arrived. Following that, I contacted my attorney. We set a meeting later that day to go over the preliminary steps in divorce procedures. I made it plain that I desired a no-fault divorce with an equal asset distribution, but I also told him to plan a backup strategy, if Laura dragged her feet. We'd file on the basis of adultery. I felt confident that I had a strong plan. I went to Planters National Bank in Marietta and opened new accounts completely in my name, depositing the cashier's checks. By the time I finished, it was lunchtime, but I didn't have much of an appetite. Nonetheless, I stopped for a short meal in Marietta before heading to my broker's office. He had completed the documentation exactly as we had agreed, ensuring that our portfolio could be separated without incurring extra tax liabilities. All that remained was for Laura and I to sign. I grabbed the documents and went to meet with my attorney. We reviewed the draft divorce documents, and everything seemed to be in order. With that, I realized I had done everything possible to secure my finances. All I needed was a short meal before heading to the station for the show. After leaving my attorney's office, I got on my phone and saw a few of messages from Laura. She sounded concerned and asked me to come home so we could talk before the game. I read her messages with fury and disbelief. Despite knowing what she had planned for the night, she had the guts to reach out with kind words and a fake concern. How blind was I to love and trust her so completely? It was infuriating. By that point, I'd made my decision. If Laura hadn't shown up at the motel that night, there might have been some hope for our marriage. It would imply that she cared enough to try to repair the situation while still acknowledging the extent of the damage. But if she went along with it, both she and Bastard Jim would have to face the repercussions of their actions. At 8 p.m., I activated the automated system for the evening's broadcast, ensuring that Monday Night Football aired uninterrupted. At precisely 8:15, I focused my attention on the motel surveillance setup. I watched Jim enter the room and make a phone call. "Hey, I'm here. Can you come over soon?" He spoke into the phone. A female voice replied, "I will be there." Shortly after the call ended, Jim murmured something beneath his breath. I made a mental note to go over it later and see if there was anything useful. As I watched him pace around the room, I couldn't help but think about how this could mean the end of my marriage. A part of me still hoped that things would improve, but deep inside, I knew better. The treachery had cut too deep, and the only thing keeping me going was the prospect of some sort of punishment with time to kill. I went through my contacts and called a few critical folks. It took a while, but I eventually found everyone I needed. By the time I finished, Laura had arrived at the motel. I returned my attention to the live feed. Their conversation was not simply casual, it was intensely personal and disturbingly intimate. The way they spoke, the familiarity in their tone, and the hidden nature of their relationship all indicated that this affair had been going on for much longer than I had previously imagined. Listening to them felt like a strike to the gut. These were two people who, in public, portrayed themselves as moral community leaders, a priest and a dedicated church secretary. Yet here they were, sliding into a level of depravity that made me sick. As the conversation progressed, I understood how convoluted the situation had gotten. Jim and Laura were enjoying more than just a flirtation. They were emotionally intertwined, and their connection had layers I hadn't anticipated. Watching her relax on the bed, evidently ready for an intimate experience, made my blood boil. Whatever they were about to receive tonight, they had it coming. They earned every bit of it. The camera captured every terrible detail. Her excited smile, the anticipation in her eyes just before things got physical. The sounds that followed were clear, a mix of frenzied exclamations and gasps, punctuated by emotions I could only characterize as passion and satisfaction. "Oh, this is intense," I overheard her exclaim, her voice full of excitement and fulfillment. "This is just what I needed." She said that she was not only a willing participant, but also enjoyed every minute of it. Jim, caught up in the moment, answered with a brazenness that made my stomach turn. This would be unforgettable, he promised, oblivious to the gravity of his words. Her responses were direct and emphatic, encouraging him to keep going. "Continue." "This is exactly what I desire," she demanded. Her voice rose as she approached her peak. His final moves were intentional, signifying the conclusion of the round for both them and me, the terrible understanding that this was more than just a fling. It was something deeper, much more embarrassing. But it wasn't over. After a little pause, they resumed. Her emotions were louder and more intense. I couldn't stand it anymore watching her react to him like that. Hearing her cries of ecstasy shattered me. I could never offer her what she obviously desired from him. The difference between what I thought our marriage was and what it had become was startling. I felt impotent and emasculated. Their performance dragged on until it became too much for me. Finally, they paused, most likely for a break. The weight of what I had just witnessed hung over me like a heavy blanket. The depth of their relationship, and how I was entirely excluded from it. It was a painful truth to confront, but I didn't have time to dwell. I decided right then and there. I set the broadcast system to a mode that would show their acts to a larger audience. This wasn't only about me anymore. I wanted the world to see who they truly were. Two people were hiding behind false facades when the phone lines at the station lighted up, signifying the beginning of the fallout. I readied myself for the upcoming storm. I called Laura's number. My heart pounded as I waited for her to pick up. I envisioned her staring at the caller ID, possibly with a smug smirk, believing she could ignore me. I heard her say, "It's Dan," possibly to Jim. Her tone was infused with defiance. "I am not responding this time. Let him stew. Keep going, honey, while he is on the phone." I clenched my teeth and disconnected, but I wasn't giving up so quickly. I dialed again, determined not to let her ignore me. After a few circles, she paused. "I guess I should accept it," she said before fumbling with the phone. "Hello, Dan," she responded harshly. Her voice is devoid of warmth. "Laura, where are you?" "What are you doing now?" I inquired, my tone steady yet questioning. She did not miss a beat. "I chose to go shopping because you didn't call earlier, just getting something to eat before going home." She lied effortlessly. Her tone remains as silky as ever. "Shopping at this hour?" I persisted, letting my skepticism show. "Yeah, and I intend to splurge," she shot back defiantly. "Fantastic, Laura. You've been such an excellent wife," I responded, my sarcasm hardly masking my pain. "Don't speak to me like that, you jerk." She yelled, "I don't know what's gotten into you," before suddenly stopping the call. Her words stung, but I wasn't about to let them affect me. I had another plan. Instead of calling her directly again, I decided to interrupt their brief encounter in a more direct manner. I phoned the motel. Ryan responded after many rings. "Ryan, it's Dan. Are you watching Monday Night Football?" I inquired, maintaining a calm tone despite the conflict within me. "No," he said, bewildered. "So you might want to start. Also, could you please call the Whirlpool Suite for me?" After a little break, I heard Jim's voice. "Hey, Dan. What do you want?" he exclaimed, evidently agitated. "Bastard. Jim, let me speak with Laura," I demanded, keeping my temper under control. A moment later, Laura's voice appeared. "Dan, why are you phoning here?" "Laura, I know everything, including the lies and cheating. I am filed for divorce and you are out," I replied, with a serenity that shocked both me and Jim. "You aren't getting off easy either." "What is wrong with you, Dan? I don't understand what has been going on with you recently," Laura replied, pretending confusion. "Laura, it's over," I replied strongly. "Perhaps you should watch Monday Night Football for a change. Enjoy the show." I hung up without waiting for an answer, my ultimate judgment on the live monitor. I watched her switch on the television. Her eyes widened in surprise as she recognized the image playing on-screen. "Oh no! Oh no! Oh no!" she repeated, rushing to get dressed. Jim cursed as he hurriedly departed, recognizing the enormity of his situation. He said viciously, "I'll destroy that son of a witch." "Jim, be careful what you murmured," I thought to myself. "It might come back to bother you once they're gone." I turned off the monitors and let the video take its length. I then turned off the live assist mode and returned the system to completely automated broadcasting. Taking the video and a few personal items from my desk, I went out of the broadcast studio, possibly for the last time. You are now caught up. I spent the remainder of the night at Frankie's. As expected, my halftime presentation became the talk of the night following the game. I ordered a taxi and returned home. Laura was seated in the darkened living room when I arrived, with the phone off the hook and tears flowing down her cheeks. She sobbed uncontrollably, but I did not feel anything. It was over for me. "Dan, how could you do this to me?" she cried. "After everything we've gone through." "No, Laura," I replied coldly. "The true question is, how could you do this to me? I'm intoxicated. I am going to bed. We will talk tomorrow." She spoke between sobs. I left her on the sofa and walked into the spare bedroom. When I got out the next morning, she was still there, looking worn and defeated. Laura had obviously not slept. Her eyes were red and puffy. But honestly, I didn't care. She was receiving what she sowed, and I was not about to feel sorry for her. I reinstalled the phone on the hook, and it immediately started ringing. I spent the next hour fielding calls from family, friends, church members, my former boss, and even our daughters. Everyone was disturbed by what they had witnessed during the halftime show. Some people were angry. Others are simply bewildered. However, none of them could be consoled. I knew it was difficult for them, but they were adults. They would get over it. Mrs. Bastard Jim made one call. She inquired if I had a copy of the tape. I promised her that I had it safely stowed and would deliver it if necessary. Clearly, she was as taken aback by Jim's actions as I was by Laura's. Some callers chastised me for revealing the affair, including Laura's parents, who were horrified by the scandal. However, the majority voiced sympathy. They understood how difficult this must have been for me. Laura sat quietly, tears running down her face. But I didn't feel anything for her. Indifference, rather than outrage or sympathy. When the continual ringing got too much, I turned off the phone, made myself a cup of coffee, and handed it to Laura without saying anything further. I placed the coffee in front of her and slid the divorce and investment documents across the table. "Laura, I'm filing for divorce," I said, maintaining an even tone. "What I witnessed last night shows that you've been disloyal for a time. I cannot continue in this marriage knowing that these documents are for a no-fault divorce, and I am giving an equal distribution of everything. It is fair." Her gaze shifted to the papers before returning to me wide-eyed in bewilderment. I continued before she could interrupt. "You have until 5 p.m. today to receive legal advice and sign. If not, after 5:01. I will file for divorce on the grounds of adultery. And if that happens, I will advocate for a property division based on our individual contributions. I have done my research. That approach benefits me far more than you. This is your best deal." She opened her mouth to talk, but I wasn't finished. "If you dispute this and it becomes public, everyone in Atlanta will know what occurred. Every disgusting detail. So be careful, Laura. This is the clearest route out for both of us." Her lips quivered as her eyes filled with tears. "Dan, I still love you," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can't we try to fix things? I know I made a mistake, but I don't want to lose you." "This isn't about love anymore," I replied, my voice frigid. "It's about your acts and what they did to us. You put someone else ahead of our marriage. I can't ignore it, and I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen. You should contact your lawyer and get this resolved." There was no yelling or theatrical outbursts, only quietness and quiet crying. After a while, she withdrew into the bedroom and returned with the signed documents. Her face was one of resignation and feeble hope. My lawyer studied everything and declared, "Your offer is reasonable," she muttered. "Is there any chance we could speak? I would like to describe what occurred. Perhaps we can figure this out." I thought about it for a bit. Part of me desired closure. Maybe hearing her story would help me understand why everything went so wrong. So I agreed, and we settled down at the kitchen table. She took a big breath before beginning. There was nobody else, Dan. It was only Jim, she admitted. It began a little before I took the job at church. I did not want for it to happen. But there was something about him. His charisma. Perhaps I cannot explain it. I was content with you, yet I felt drawn to him. I believed he loved me. I remained silent, letting her finish. She looked at me with beseeching eyes, hoping I'd believe her sincerity when she was finished. I leaned forward to meet her gaze. I got it. Jim is charismatic. I said it in a neutral tone. But first, let's clarify one point. He never felt love for you. You were only a toy. I pulled out my phone and played 2 audio clips that I had saved. The first occurred the day I overheard them. "That idiot woman better keep our affair private. She's nice, but she won't last. She was easily seduced, but she needs to leave." Laura's face had lost its color. I did not stop. I played the second footage, which was recorded before she arrived at the motel. "I'm going to maul her tonight and fire her tomorrow. If she causes a fuss, I will threaten to expose her to Dan. Cannot let him find out." The hush that ensued was deafening. Laura stared at the table, tears streaming freely. "So not only did you damage our marriage, but you also completely underestimated him," I said, my voice steady yet forceful. "He didn't care about you. I witnessed how he treated you and worse. I saw how you appreciated it. I could never treat you like way because I respected you. I loved you. However, that respect no longer exists. Laura, you breached our vows, and we can't go back on them." She grieved gently, recognizing the truth of my words. After a lengthy pause, she signed both sets of papers without additional discussion. I informed her that I would be relocating soon, giving her some time to locate a new apartment before I moved out permanently. There was nothing more to say. She'd made her choices, and now we were both dealing with the consequences. It was time to go it alone, financially. I doubted Laura's ability to maintain the house, and I certainly did not want to dwell there, surrounded by sad memories. We agreed to sell the property and divide the proceeds equally, exactly like the rest of our holdings. After gathering my paperwork and packing my luggage, I dropped them off at my broker's office before checking into a hotel for the night. The next day, I met with my attorney, who swiftly filed the divorce papers in County Superior Court. We also reviewed the consequences of my conduct at the station and with the FCC. He warned me about potential fines, job harm, and legal concerns. Jail time appeared doubtful, but heavy financial penalties, including the loss of my broadcasting license, were genuine possibilities. The consequences became apparent within a few days. The FCC served me, launching a court battle that consumed about a year's worth of cash. Worse, my broadcasting license was officially canceled, preventing me from working in the field for 2 years. It looked like the end of my career, yet there was a silver lining. A top executive aware with my circumstances offered me a position that complied with FCC regulations. Despite the uncertain legality of my activities, he sympathized with me, most likely due to his own painful divorce experience. I felt a sense of thankfulness. As for Bastard Jim, he confronted me once at Frankie's, obviously itching for a fight. Things quickly escalated, and I pinned him down before calmly stating, "I do not want to hear from you again. Is this clear?" He scowled and spat back. "Forget you. I am not in the mood for games." I leaned forward and said, "I have an audio recording of you threatening me. I may report it to the police, obtain a restraining order, and file charges. You'd be facing jail time. Is this what you want?" Jim shook his head, unwilling to press any further. I gave him a push in the ribs just for good measure, so I believe that concludes this conversation. He went away, humiliated. Even though he is no longer a pastor, he has been expelled from the church and stripped of his ordination. He remains the same disgusting man. Last I heard, he got a job at a local travel agency. Despite his charisma, he'll need to hustle now, especially since his wife successfully sued him for divorce on the grounds of adultery, resulting in a large payout. My incriminating tape most likely played a significant influence in her victory, even though its legality was questioned. As for me, I am going on. Life isn't perfect, but I'm learning to be happy again. I've casually dated a few ladies in recent months, but haven't pursued any meaningful relationships. I've avoided sexual relationships because I still feel that intimacy should be saved for marriage. My values have not altered, even if others believe otherwise. When I meet the proper person, I plan to marry her and share our experiences together. Until then, I am patient. I believe that the right companion will appear when the moment is right. Laura and I occasionally see one other during family gatherings, such as Rachel's college graduation and Jessica's baby baptism. I remain civil but distant. I've made it plain that I am here for our girls, not her. I'm not interested in re-establishing any form of relationship with her. It's hardly even a friendship. She's obviously unhappy. I can see the emotional weight of our breakup is still weighing on her, and she's sure to regret her actions. But regret does not change the reality that she betrayed me. Some may be able to forgive such a betrayal, but for me, that door is closed. She made her decision, and now she must deal with the repercussions. Despite her sorrow, the impact from the Monday Night Football episode has ruined her reputation. Everyone who observed it remembers her in an unflattering way. Rumor has it that she receives a lot of date offers. However, to her credit, she has not accepted any. But I guess it's difficult knowing that the majority of these men regard her as nothing more than an easy conquest. This is the hard truth she now faces. It is hardly a decent way to live, but it is the life she has chosen for herself. In the end, she abandoned our marriage and everything we had established for a fling with a man who never cared about her, and now she is left with nothing but remorse. Here's the next story. The early light shines through our kitchen windows, catching the steam rising from my coffee cup. It's 7:15 a.m., just like every other Tuesday. Lisa sits across from me, staring at her phone screen. I recommend the coffee, which is really delicious today. Lisa reacts with a deliberate thumb scroll. The silence that follows is not our regular comfort zone. I watch as she raises her cup to her lips, her other hand still wrapped around her phone. Her phone vibrates quietly against the marble countertop. She does not check it right away. Is there a busy day ahead? The regular meetings? Client presentations? She glances up. Finally. You will have a board review at 10 o'clock. However, 4 should suffice. We thought we'd try the new Italian restaurant for dinner. Oh. She tucks one strand of hair behind her ear. I have a later meeting. Shouldn't you've remembered? I discussed this last week. It must have slipped my mind. The phone vibrates again. This time she reaches for it. I get a peek of the notification banner. Just one letter. J. Before she swipes it away, I should prepare, Lisa announces while standing up. She leaves her half-empty coffee cup on the table. I hear her footsteps climbing the stairs. The kitchen feels odd without her. I stand to clear the table. Her phone is forgotten on the counter. I should not look yet. My hand moves of its own accord. The screen lights up, giving a text preview. Last night, the message from Jay was cut off. The sound of the shower starting upstairs brings me back. I take a step back from the phone, my heart pounding. I am busy loading the dishwasher. The familiar clink of ceramic on metal is insufficient to drown out the voices of doubt. Everything has a logical explanation. That's what I tell myself when straightening my tie in the hallway mirror. I'm going out. I make a call upstairs. Have a good day, Lisa answers. Her voice was muffled via the bathroom door. I halt at the front door. My hand is resting on the knob through the window. I catch a sight of our neighbor Jeff jogging by. He waves. I return the gesture automatically. The morning sun feels less warm as I walk to my car. I look back at our house. The street is silent, unchanged, but something has moved. I start the automobile in my rearview mirror. I watch Jeff finish his loop around the street before disappearing around the corner. J for Jeff as I drive out of the driveway. I find myself memorizing information, the exact time. Lisa's automobile is in position number 743 in the garage. Small things, things that have no real significance, things that should not matter. The weeks that followed were filled with paranoia and sleepless nights. I pour myself into work, taking additional shifts at the office, but my thoughts keep returning to that morning. Now we're laying awake in our bed, listening to Lisa's steady breathing. I can't ignore the growing distance between us tonight. Sleep eludes me tonight, as it has for many nights, until the early hours, when insatiable curiosity propels me from our bed to the frigid glow of my laptop screen. After that morning, the days blur together, each weighed down by unsaid queries and dinner discussions that end abruptly, Lisa's expanding collection of late meetings, and the fact that her phone is now face down on every surface. The digital clock reads 2:17 a.m., its red numbers glowing against the darkness. When I open my laptop, the glow feels accusing. The fan's white noise masks the small clicks of my typing. Years of experience in cybersecurity come with perks. I am familiar with the most popular password patterns, as well as the variations that individuals use when they believe they are clever. Lisa has always been a system attacker, our anniversary, her mother's maiden name. Predictable combinations that make me wonder if she ever imagined I'd find the first flaw in her digital fortress in 7 minutes. Her email contains nothing unusual. She is too smart for that. Social media is next. And here in the maze of private chats, I discover the first thread that unravels everything. Miss You has already read Jeff's message, which was time-stamped 3 days ago. Last night was amazing. My fingers hover above the trackpad, shaking slightly. There is more. There's so much more. I scroll through months of exchanges, each one a fresh wound from Paul. Your hubby is clueless. See you at lunch tomorrow. Adam, you are amazing at keeping secrets. That's what makes this so enjoyable. The messages blend together. Photographs appear. Lisa in restaurants that I've never been to. I believed my grins were unique. Jeff slung his arm around her waist at a pub. Paul's reflection in her sunglasses on what was supposed to be a business trip. The continual sound of fans was suddenly unbearable. I cast a glance at Lisa, who is comfortably sleeping. A fresh message notification pops up. Jeff shared a late-night thought. I can't wait until David's conference next week. 3 full days. My throat contracts. Lisa urged me to attend the conference in Boston, arguing that I should not lose out on the networking opportunity. David. Lisa's voice, thick with slumber, causes me to freeze. I carefully close the laptop, and darkness fills the space. Just checking some work emails. I manage the lie, but it tastes nasty. Come to bed, she murmured, already falling back asleep. It is late. I slide the laptop onto the nightstand. My movements are mechanical. The ceiling fan continues its continuous round. I love you. Lisa mumbles and reaches for my hand in the dark. I let her find it, and her fingers intertwined with mine. Her wedding band feels cold on my skin. I respond, I love you too. Lisa turns in her sleep, her hands slipping away from mine. I reach for my laptop again, but this time with purpose. There are transactions to track, trends to discover, and pieces to organize. The night stretches ahead, full with digital breadcrumbs to follow. In the morning, I'll take part. The faithful husband, a devoted professional, the neighbor who greets Jeff during his morning exercise. The night fades into a haze of web tabs and bank statements. Hours slip by unnoticed, measured only by the steady action of the ceiling fan and the progressive lightening of the sky beyond our bedroom window. As the first indications of daylight appear, paint the walls gray. I've established a foundation of proof that can never be undone. The laptop's harsh glare burnt images into my vision. But the facts it showed burned even deeper. The laptop's blue glow fades as dawn breaks through our bedroom window. I had been awake for hours, my mind racing with possibilities. Each treachery I found last night has hardened into something stronger, colder than simply hurt. The ceiling fan continues to spin, but its beat has taken on the impression of a metronome, counting down to something inevitable. I get out of bed before Lisa's alarm goes off, making my way downstairs in the dreary morning light. Coffee comes first. I'll require clarification. The kitchen feels different today. Each surface contains memories. I need to reevaluate. My phone vibrates with a confirmation email from a security business. Discrete home surveillance systems, next day delivery. I would place the order sometime between midnight and sunrise, between uncovering Paul's lunch dates and Adam's covert rendezvous. Lisa's steps on the stairs. 13 and then 7, right on schedule. I straighten my shoulders and put on the mask of normality that I'll be wearing for the next few weeks. You're awake early, she adds, grabbing for her coffee mug. Couldn't sleep. Work on the Neumann account, she inquires, her voice bearing the typical note of concern. Something like that. I watch her check her phone, noting how she tilts the screen away from me. Have a busy day, ma'am. Client meetings last till 6 o'clock. Don't stay up for dinner, she says, not meeting my gaze. Never do this again. She looks up abruptly, but I've already turned away. My expression was carefully neutral. The game has changed, but she is unaware that we are currently playing. The doorbell rings at 10:43 a.m. The security system comes in unlabeled cartons. I spent my lunch hour installing the first cameras, one in the living room and another in the kitchen. Small, silent observers await whatever happens next. My phone pings with a notification. The system is operational. I open the app and see our kitchen. Empty now, but waiting. The living room appears on the following screen. They will now perceive that it is unraveling. Days pass, like photos slipping across a table. I record everything with mechanical accuracy. Lisa's late meetings became a deluge of time-stamped footage. Her primping in the hallway mirror at 6:13 p.m., checking her lipstick. Jeff's casual appearances, number 2. Perfectly timed for a coincidence. A week later, I add audio recording devices. Her tone of voice alters when she speaks to them. Takes on notes I had never heard before. I catalog each one evening when I go over the day's footage. Lisa comes in the doorway of my home office. "You've been working late a lot," she adds as she leans on the frame. I turn down the video feed displaying her afternoon meeting with Adam, simply trying to remain ahead. Maybe we should go on vacation soon. It's just the two of us. I catch her gaze, looking for any indication of guilt. There is nothing except practiced concern. That'd be nice. I lie. After the Boston conference, perhaps. Oh, right. What about the conference? She shifts slightly. When is that again? Next week, Wednesday to Friday. I pause, allowing the scene to unfold. Unless you believe I should skip it. No. You should definitely leave. It's crucial for your career. I nod, returning to my laptop. You're probably correct. She remains for a moment longer before retreating. I wait until her footsteps faint before resuming the video feed. In the video, she laughs at something Adam says. The next morning, I set up the final cameras, tiny lenses that will record every angle of our bedroom. My hands do not shake while I place them. I test the streams on my phone while watching Lisa move around our house. She acts for the cameras without realizing they are there. Late that night, I reviewed the day's footage. Lisa is sitting at our kitchen island, smiling at her phone, when I notice a text message exchange captured by one of the cameras. Jeff can't wait until next week. Lisa, it's 3 whole days. It will be perfect. He has no suspicions. I save the footage. Add it to my growing collection. The Boston conference is 6 days away. 6 days to complete my preparations. The ceiling fan over our bed continues to spin each night. Lisa sleeps soundly alongside me, oblivious that every breath and thoughtless movement is being recorded. The evidence pounds heavily in my briefcase as I drive through the pre-dawn darkness. Sleeping had been impossible. Now, as the sun begins to rise beyond the horizon, turning the sky from black to steely gray, I make my way downtown to the location I've had saved in my phone for weeks, but hadn't had the confidence to visit until today. The morning following my last surveillance installation, I park outside Mitchell and Associates Family Law. My wedding band catches the early morning sunlight as I reach for the handle. "Mr. Harrison," she adds, offering her hand. "Please take a seat." I put the briefcase on her desk. Each click of the latches echoed around the quiet room. Before we begin, I remark, "I need to know about attorney-client privilege. Anything you tell me is strictly confidential." She folds her hands on the desk. "So, what brings you here today?" I start with emails, then text messages. Sandra's countenance is neutral as she studies each piece of evidence, but her brows raise slightly at times. Stamps the frequency and patterns. 3 separate affairs, she claims. Not quite a question. Concurrent ones. I handed her the USB drive. There is more. She inserts it into her computer, and I observe her expression as she watches chosen clips. Lisa kissed Jeff in our driveway. Paul's hand was resting around her waist at a neighborhood barbecue. Adam made secret visits during my late meetings. She meticulously explains your spying procedures. How were they obtained? Everything is lawful. I used qualified private detectives and home security equipment. She nods and takes notes in perfect handwriting. With such extensive proof, our state takes adultery quite seriously in divorce proceedings. She pauses as if observing me. Do you want to go nuclear? I want everything. Given the magnitude of her infidelity and the data you've presented, that is possible. She starts spreading out papers, but be prepared for things to go ugly. It is already ugly. I simply want it to be final. An hour later, I depart with a packet containing preliminary papers and a strategy that feels like armor. Claire responds to the second knock. David? Her amazement appears genuine. Paul is at work. I know I came to talk to you. May I come inside? She hesitates briefly before stepping aside. Of course. I've just made coffee. I follow her into their kitchen. She pours 2 cups of coffee and gestures toward the breakfast nook. Sugar? She asks. No, thanks. I wait till she sits across from me. Claire, what I am about to show you. This is going to be challenging. Her hands curled around the mug. What is it? I bring out my phone and view a neatly managed collection of messages and photographs. Paul has been having an affair with Lisa. The color drains from her face as she picks up the phone and scrolls through message after message. Her coffee remains untouched. How long? Her voice is barely audible across the table. I can provide proof of at least 6 months. But Claire, he is not the only one. Her head snaps upward. What do you mean? I show her the rest. Jeff, Adam, and sophisticated web of deception. All of them, she whispers. I've previously seen a lawyer. I'm going to file for divorce next week. Claire stands up and walks to her kitchen window. Why? Tell me, she inquires, remaining facing the window. You could have just handled Paul through the lawyers. You deserve to know. And because I thought. I pause. I thought you might want to help ensure that they all suffer penalties. She turns slowly, and I see a change in her demeanor. Grief hardens into determination. What did you have in mind? I outline my plans. The deliberate disclosure of facts, the meticulous breakdown of their social facades, and the subsequent legal and social isolation. They'll forget anything she says. That's the idea. Claire returns to the table, having forgotten her coffee. The neighborhood council meets next week. Everyone will be present, including Adam's wife. I inquire, even though I already know the answer. Sarah never misses any meetings. Claire's face shows a faint, bitter smile. She is standing for council president. Perfect timing. We spent the next hour planning. I should go, I say, finally standing. Claire leads me to the door and pauses before opening it. David. I turn back. Thank you for informing me. Her voice is now steady, stronger. They thought they were quite clever, didn't they? They still do. Walking to my car, I hear Claire's door close behind me with a firm click. My phone vibrates. A notification from one of the house's cameras. Lisa is primping in our bathroom mirror, perhaps getting ready for her rendezvous. I start the car. The neighborhood council meeting is 6 days away. We have 6 days to perfect our timing so that when everything breaks apart, we have the most impact possible. The drive home had been a flurry of streetlights and strategy. I'd scarcely slept, tossing and turning while Lisa took steady breaths beside me. Now, as morning light pours through the blinds in my home office, I take the device from my briefcase. The morning after meeting Claire, I sat in my home office. Lisa's old phone is in my hands. She had upgraded last month, leaving this one in a drawer, unlocked and wiped, full of digital footprints. The screen lights as I compose a message to Adam, each word carefully chosen for maximum impact. We miss our alone time in the meeting room. Remember last week? Adam's response is swift. God, sure. You still have nail marks. My jaw tightens, but I continue typing. The office printer comes to life, spitting out screenshots. I place them in a manila envelope, along with carefully selected surveillance images of their professional encounters. The address label reads, Human Resources Department, attention, Margaret Wells. Lisa's voice rises from downstairs, taking a work call. Of course, we can move the presentation to Thursday, she explains. I will handle it personally. I close the envelope and check my watch. The first cracks develop at 2 p.m. My phone vibrates with a text from Claire, who is eating lunch with Sarah from accounting. It's starting. 3 people phoned HR. Regarding issues, Margaret is outraged. I reply with a simple thumbs up, then go back to watching Lisa's work. Email at 4:13 p.m. Lisa phones me. Her voice was strained. Something is awry at work. Folks are behaving strangely. Strange? How? I keep my voice neutral. I do not know. Margaret has called me in for a meeting tomorrow morning, and Adam has not returned my messages. I'm sure it's not serious, I say, watching her move across our kitchen. Maybe it's just end-of-quarter stress. Maybe. She pauses, and I can hear her taking long breaths. I should stay later tonight. Get ahead of whatever it is. Do not work too hard. By dusk, the rumors were spreading quickly. Lisa doesn't get home until 9 p.m. I'm in the living room when she walks in, shoulders down and makeup slightly smeared. Is it a rough day? You've no idea. She falls onto the couch near me. Everything simply fell apart. Want to discuss it? She shook her head and took out her phone. The security camera captures her emotions as she flicks through the texts. I need a drink, she mutters and walks into the kitchen. I open my inbox and look at the timestamp on the most recent HR report. Bulletin. Tomorrow's mandatory department meeting is at 9 a.m. sharp. Lisa's coughing in our bathroom wakes me up in the morning. I stand in the doorway. Should I phone Margaret? Tell her you aren't feeling well? No. Lisa straightens up and wipes her mouth. No, I need to go in. We need to remedy this. I bring her a glass of water and our fingertips brush. I believe everything will work out. I lie. She dresses for work in her sharpest suit. I check my phone. Claire has already texted. Margaret has the entire paperwork on her desk. Board members arrived early. The emails begin to arrive around 10 a.m. First, Lisa was pulled from crucial initiatives. Then, she reassigns her team members. By lunchtime, she had been relieved of her supervisory responsibilities, awaiting an investigation. My phone rang. Lisa again? Her voice cracked. They're saying something, David. There are some horrible things about me and Adam, about other things. What kind of items? It does not matter. None of this is true. She pauses. I need to go to another meeting. The security camera captures her arrive home at 3 p.m. early. She's crying before she even gets it inside the door. I discover her in the kitchen, staring into an empty wine glass. They suspended me, she whispers, anticipating termination. What? I move closer. They say. They claim they have evidence. Messages, photos. She glances up at me with desperation. But this is not doable. I was very careful. I let the silence stretch, watching her comprehend what she has just admitted. I mean, she backtracks. Everything is created. Someone is trying to destroy me. Why would someone do that? She has no response. He simply grabs for the wine bottle with shaky hands. Near midnight, I discover her in our home office, hurriedly scrolling through old emails before going to bed. I inquire from the doorway. I need to work this out. She does not look up. Someone has accessed my accounts, evidence that was deliberately planted. There must be a trail, Lisa. I keep my voice mild. Perhaps you should contact a lawyer. She freezes and finally meets my gaze. I should explain that I am a wrongful termination lawyer, unless there is something else you require legal counsel on. No, absolutely not. She goes back to the computer, but her hands are shaking. It's worse now. I only want to clear my name. I leave her there, surrounded by the digital remnants of her career, in bed. I scan the surveillance footage one final time. She is still searching. Every dead end makes me more desperate. The hours blend together as I drift in and out of a restless sleep. One eye remained on the feed. Lisa joins me in bed about midnight. The soothing whir of the ceiling fan replaces the nervous tapping of keyboard keys, yet the tension from earlier remains thick in the air between us. The bedroom ceiling fan spins lazily above us, sending shadows dancing across the walls. Lisa lays beside me. The blue light from her phone illuminates her face as she scrolls. The covers rustle as she moves nervously. The bedside clock reads 11:42 p.m. The fan whirs above us, measuring the seconds as Lisa's scrolling finger pauses in mid-motion. What happens now? Her voice wavers slightly. Jeff, Paul, Adam. I say each name with meticulous accuracy, all of them. The phone falls from her fingers and lands face down on the comforter. In the faint light, I see her throat working as she swallows. David, I'm not sure what you're talking about. Her voice has developed a stronger tremble. I roll to my side, facing her. After hours, the conference room hosts meetings with Adam from Paul's office. Jeff was in our driveway while I was supposed to be at work. That is ludicrous. She sits up abruptly, linens tangled around her waist. Who has been telling you these lies? Nobody told me anything. I saw everything myself. Her head rotates to face me, her eyes wide. What do you mean? I grab for my phone on the nightstand and tap the screen. The security camera stream arrives, displaying several views of our bedroom. The cameras went in 3 months ago. I skim across different feeds, kitchen, living room, and driveway. Have you been snooping on me? Her voice raises, indignant and panicked. I correct her quietly. There is a distinction. This is illegal. She scrambles out of bed, putting some distance between us. You cannot merely... It is entirely lawful to install security systems in my own home. I gently sit up, as if it were lawful to engage private investigators to document your outside actions. Her face loses its color. Workplace concerns, human resource issues, investigation. Was that you? That was only the beginning. I slide my legs over the side of the bed, watching her back towards the door. Tomorrow is the neighborhood council meeting. What has that got to do with anything? Sarah will be there, Adam's wife. I smile slightly. Claire is bringing snacks and a very fascinating talk. Lisa's hand shoots towards her mouth. Claire knows. Claire knows everything. I stand and move to the window. So does my lawyer. The divorce papers are ready. David, please. Her voice crackles. We can work it out. I will do anything. The terminology is simple. I turn back to face her. You will sign unopposed. You will leave with what you brought into the marriage. There's nothing more. You will resign your position before they can terminate you, and you will leave by the end of the week. Or what? Her tone carries a tinge of rebellion, or everything comes out, not simply at work or in the neighborhood. I take a step forward. Everything, Lisa. Each message, each video, every tiny secret you thought was securely concealed. She sinks against the doorframe. Why are you doing this? Because you left me with no choice. I walk past her into the hallway. The papers will arrive in the morning. I recommend you read them attentively. I pause at the top of the stairs. Oh, Lisa, don't bother contacting any of them for assistance. They're dealing with their own issues right now. The journey home feels unreal, with streetlights flashing by as I traverse familiar routes that now feel anything but by the time I arrive into the driveway. Exhaustion had settled deep within my bones. I stare at the guest room ceiling for hours, listening to Lisa's muted tears through the wall before falling asleep. When consciousness returns, it carries the weight of what's to come. Here's the next story, for the kids. But I spent it anyway. I didn't mean to, but I couldn't stop myself. It seemed like the appropriate thing to do at the time. Yes, I realize it sounds horrible, but please hear me out. It was a minor thing. At least that is what I told myself. But suddenly it was me. I messed up big time, and now here I am. Hello? My name is Samantha. I am 33, and this is a mess. Okay, I know I'm not making excuses, but I can't help it. Sometimes life feels like it's coming apart. Have you ever felt that everything is too heavy, like you can't win no matter what? That is me. Right now, I'm sitting here trying to figure out how I got here, how I got into this enormous argument with Jason. The entire home was anxious, and my mind was racing with thoughts about money. And you know what? I simply couldn't stop myself. Jason, I have been married for 8 years. We have 2 children, Hannah, 6, and Nate, 4. He's a good person. But recently, I'm not sure. He has recently become too concerned with ensuring that we are always financially responsible and doing the right thing. It's not like I'm a big spender or anything. I understand how to manage a budget. It's simply that when things get tight, I feel the need to flee. Also, there's shopping. Well, it's my escape. Just a small treat now and then. I assumed it was innocent, but Jason is all about savings and fines. Maybe he is right. Perhaps we should save more. But I'm not out shopping for luxury handbags or anything. No, it was only a quick trip to Target. A small treat for myself. Nothing huge, right? Jason was complaining about how we needed to save more money for the kids' college fund on the day I did it. Yes, I heard him. I knew it was necessary. But the fact that he was lecturing me made me uncomfortable. It was like, okay, you know what? You've been acting as if I'm the problem with our finances for the past few months. Like, if I don't tighten up, we'll be broke. And I despise that. It made me feel small, as if I wasn't contributing enough. It didn't help that I was feeling a little distant recently. Jason has been working late a lot, and when he gets home, he is addicted to his phone, reading work emails. It's as if he doesn't notice me anymore. So that's where I was coming from when I made my decision. I went to Target without expecting to go nuts. Simply pick up a few items. But once I arrived there, it was as if my brain had gone off. I wandered down the aisles, grabbing this and that. A fresh set of bathroom towels, some toys for the kids, and a nice jacket for me. It did not seem like a big concern at the moment. Just stuff. It's nothing serious. I even convinced myself it was practical. The kids required new items, which I could always excuse because we needed them anyway. But deep down, I understood exactly what I was doing. I was utilizing that card to get away from all the stress. I didn't want to worry about the bills, the conflicts, or Jason's aloof behavior. And of course, when I arrived home, I felt great. I felt a tiny buzz, like when you eat the perfect dinner and everything feels great. Then Jason noticed the receipt, the expression on his face. I can't even explain it. I could see disappointment in his eyes. It wasn't just about money. He seemed to perceive me as unconcerned about our future. And perhaps I didn't. Not at that point. I was so wrapped up in doing something that felt good that I didn't even consider the repercussions. He was upset. And I get it. Okay, I do. But at the same time, he was not listening to me. He was unaware of how difficult things had become recently, how I've been feeling overwhelmed and disconnected. He constantly telling me how irresponsible I was and how we needed to prioritize the children's future. Of course we do, but I needed something for myself too. I mean, is that really wrong? I do not believe it is. I didn't know how to tell him that. I did not want to appear weak or excuse my actions, but in my opinion, I was not entirely wrong. He kept pressing, telling me I needed to stop spending like that I was being selfish, and I snapped. I replied, well, you don't care about me anymore, so why should I care about saving? Yes, I mentioned that, and I knew it was wrong, but I also sort of meant it. He hasn't been the same recently. He's been so focused on getting things perfect for the kids and paying the expenses that he isn't realizing how much I need him, not just to help us, but to be there for me. The way he has been acting, It's as if I'm invisible. So yeah, I purchased some items. They made me feel visible for a moment. Anyway, he closed down. He entered the bedroom, closed the door, and that was the end of it. I couldn't even walk inside and speak to him. I just stayed downstairs, staring at the luggage, feeling guilty and frustrated. I knew I shouldn't have done it, but I didn't think I was entirely wrong. I wasn't squandering my money, right? I mean, it was only a couple $100. It is unlikely that we will become homeless as a result of this. But Jason didn't see it that way. And now I'm left wondering whether it was worthwhile. But well, it felt nice in the moment. So maybe I am the problem here. Maybe I am the one who can't get it together. Do I regret it? I do not know. Maybe. But not enough to significantly alter things. To be honest, if I could go back in time, I would probably do the same thing. It's simply who I am. I make decisions in the moment and suffer the consequences afterward. So after the entire goal incident, things only got worse. I wasn't expecting Jason to shut me out like Wei. But we are here for a few days. He scarcely spoke with me. I could feel the tension rising. I know I messed up, but I didn't expect him to become so frigid. It was as if I were living in a house with a stranger. It wasn't simply about money anymore. It was the silence, the distance. I was getting desperate, but I had no idea how to remedy it. He was angry. I was frustrated, and nothing I did seemed to make things better. Every time I tried to talk to him, he gave me these brief responses. He'd say things like, "We'll talk about it later," or just nod his head, and then get back to what he was doing. It made me feel like I was in the wrong, like if I didn't repair things, it was all on me. But you know what? He wasn't trying to solve anything either. The further he moved away, the more I felt compelled to do something, anything, to attract his attention. I attempted the entire Ansari thing, but it didn't feel like it was important. I tried to convince him that I was just trying to deal with everything and that I was stressed, but he didn't believe me. He kept reminding me that we needed to prioritize our children's future and preserve. I got it. I really do. But there's only so much of it you can take before it feels like an indictment. Like it's entirely my fault. The thing is, I am not stupid. I know I should not have wasted that money. I know I shouldn't have let it get that far. But everything seemed out of my control. The bills were piling up. The pressure to be a good mother and wife is to be perfect. It suffocated me. And when you're drowning, it's sometimes easier to just sink than to keep swimming, right? So I took a quick breather. And while I may not have chosen the target, it was something I could influence for a brief period of time. I hoped Jason would come around. Instead, he began discussing how we needed to be more fiscally responsible. He was all about spreadsheets and keeping track of every dime. It made my head spin. The harder he pushed it, the more I felt like a failure. I felt like I couldn't do anything right. I was just trying to get by each day, and he made me feel like a failure as a wife. I'm sure he didn't try to make me feel that way, but that's how it came across. I'll admit that I started avoiding him. I couldn't take the way he looked at me. He was disappointed, and I despised that feeling. But ignoring him simply made things worse. He'd spend more time locked up in the workplace or on his phone. It was as if we were housemates, not a couple. And you know what? I didn't know how to solve it. How can you restore a marriage when you believe you're the only one trying? So I did what I always do when I'm not sure what else to do. I attempted to divert myself. I began spending more time at home, doing things for the kids, cooking meals, and ensuring that the house looked well. Even so, it didn't feel like enough. I started feeling upset with Jason for being so intent on doing the right thing. His entire existence seemed to revolve on practicality and responsibility. And yes, that may be essential. But it only made me feel small. I tried to talk to him again, but this time I became defensive. I told him, "You're acting as if I'm the problem here, but we're in this together." I didn't want to be the one to take the responsibility anymore. Yes, I messed up with the money, but he's acting as if I'm a villain. That got me angry. I didn't expect him to organize a parade for me, but I wanted him to understand. I wanted him to understand that I wasn't attempting to wreck things. I was not attempting to be reckless. But his reaction. He stated, "I just want us to be okay, Samantha. I want us to get ahead." And it dawned on me that I was being selfish in some way. But I didn't know how to seek for aid. I wasn't sure how to tell him that. It wasn't only about the money. It was everything. I guess that's what prompted me to do it again. The issue with Target was that it wasn't enough. I started creeping around a bit. I'd go out, eat lunch by myself, or shop for household items. Things I knew Jason wouldn't approve of. But it made me feel better, even if only temporarily. It offered me a sense of control in a world that seemed out of control. I didn't tell him, of course, but he noticed. Of course he did. And that sparked another dispute, with me excusing my conduct and him staring at me as if he didn't recognize me anymore. And maybe he's correct. Maybe I have changed. Maybe I have always been like this. But it's become more clear. I do not know. All I know is that this is no longer simply about money. It is about something bigger, something I'm not even sure how to solve. Maybe I messed up. Perhaps I continue to make mistakes. But I can't help but believe that Jason doesn't see me for who I am. I am not flawless, and neither is he. I want to make things right. I do. But I really don't know how. I wish I could repair everything, but all I've done is make matters worse. And now, I wonder if he'll forgive me this time. I was trying so hard to hold things together, but it seemed like everything was sliding through my fingers. Jason didn't say anything, but I could feel the tension rising between us. I began to resent him, honestly. I despised the fact that he seemed to judge every move I made. He'd come home, be quiet, and expect things to improve. But how could they be? Nothing had changed. The bills still arrived. The stress remained in the air, and I was still responsible for keeping the house operating. Was he truly expecting things to resolve itself? Because he chose to disregard it. One day I couldn't take it anymore. I was standing in the kitchen, staring at the stack of unopened bills on the countertop. I could feel tears forming, but I refused to let them fall. Crying would not help. Jason had already shut me out. So, what would my tears do? But then he came in, glanced at the mess, and simply shook his head. I could tell he was going to say something, but I snapped before he could. "Do you think this is easy for me?" I basically yelled at him. "Do you think I enjoy spending money we don't have? Do you believe I am doing this on purpose?" Jason looked at me like I was insane. "Samantha, it's not just about money. This is about everything. We are not talking. We're not connected. It's as if we live in different universes." I felt my chest tighten. Of course, he didn't understand it. He wasn't the one trying to manage everything. He wasn't the only one who felt as if their entire world was collapsing due to a few stupid blunders. "Do you think I want this? Do you think I appreciate being this person?" "I'm just trying to keep it together, Jason," I shot back, my voice cracking, but I was not going to show him how wounded I was. "You're so busy trying to control everything, while I'm simply trying to survive." I despised the way I sounded, but I couldn't help it. Every statement felt like I was pushing back against the wall he had created around us. He did not get it. He didn't notice how much pressure I was under, how I was suffocating under the weight of it all. Jason gave a long sigh and rubbed his temples as if he had a headache. I wanted to tell him that it was about more than money, but I wasn't sure how. I didn't know how to show him that I wasn't some reckless, selfish person who threw everything away. I simply didn't know what to do anymore. "I am not attempting to control everything, Samantha," he added calmly. "I'm just trying to avoid becoming buried in debt. You keep spending, and we'll wind up in a situation we can't get out of." I could not help but roll my eyes. He wasn't wrong, but I wasn't just spending money for fun. I was looking for some relief, some escape. But how would I convey this to him? How could I convince him that I wasn't just being irresponsible with money? I was drowning, and he was too busy staring at spreadsheets to throw me a lifeline. Okay, maybe I don't want to be perfect. Okay? I snapped. Tears began to boil in the corners of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Perhaps I simply want to feel like I'm doing something properly for once. Jason remained silent for a moment. He didn't know how to respond, which only made me angry. The quiet between us felt stifling, like if everything we hadn't said was accumulating into one massive unspoken thing. I glanced away, attempting to conceal the way my hands were shaking. I mumbled, "I don't know what to do anymore, Jason. I've attempted to correct everything. I've tried to be what you desire, but nothing has worked. Why don't we sit down and discuss this?" He spoke softly now. I could tell he was trying, but it seemed too little, too late. It wasn't about sitting anymore. It was not about talking. It was about how things had been piling up for so long. And we were both too obstinate to admit how horrible things actually were. "I do not want to talk about it anymore," I informed him, my voice stern. "Talking does not change anything. You simply don't get it, Jason. You never have." And it was the truth. He did not get it. I doubt he ever would. Jason was all about the numbers, the consistency, and the proper manner of doing things. But he didn't notice me. He didn't see the fight, the tiredness, the never-ending battle to keep everything together while everything else seemed to be falling apart. "Fine," he responded, his voice low. "But do not come to me when everything goes wrong." His comments stung, but I wasn't going to show him how much I won't. I shot back, the words coming out bitterer than I had intended. But I was done. I am done with him. I'm done with myself. I finished everything. The blame fell on me. Sure, but I thought Jason had also given up. Perhaps I didn't deserve his understanding. But at the time, I didn't care. The remainder of the night was silent. We went to bed without chatting. The distance between us is growing wider. With each passing minute, I felt a great weight in my chest, as if I had done the worst thing possible, but I had no idea how to remedy it. I wasn't sure how to make him notice myself, or whether I really knew how to see myself. But I knew one thing. I was weary of feeling like I was to blame. Everything seemed like my fault. And Jason was not making things any easier. And when I reflected on it, I realized I might have made a mistake. But it wasn't simply my burden to bear anymore. I could feel the stress rising within me like a pressure cooker poised to erupt. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I disliked Jason. Yes, I messed up. But why did I constantly have to repair everything? He rarely spoke to me anymore. Just gave me disappointed looks when I accomplished anything that didn't fit his definition of responsibility. He had no idea how difficult it was to keep our marriage together or how lonely I felt in it. I mean, we had children. We have a family to watch out for. But was that all it was? Now? A list of commitments? A continual dispute about who is in responsibility of repairing what went wrong? I wanted more than that. I wanted to feel as if he saw me, not as an issue to be resolved, but as his wife, someone who deserved more than his frustration. A few days after our dispute, I found myself standing in front of a store display, staring at a beautiful handbag I'd been wanting for weeks. I knew I shouldn't spend the money. Believe me, I knew. But I also knew that was the only thing that made me feel like I was finally doing something properly. If I bought it, I'd feel better for a little while. And at the time, that small bit was sufficient. I told myself I was only looking to window shop. But as soon as my palm touched the supple leather of the bag, I felt a surge of exhilaration. I was doing something for me, something that felt important. It did not matter if we were still overdue on our bills. It did not matter that Jason would be furious if he found out. All that mattered was that I wanted it. And for once, I didn't want to consider the repercussions. I swear, I almost convinced myself it was no big thing. I justified it in my thoughts by thinking myself I deserved it. I have been working hard. I am not flawless, but I am trying. It felt like something I might say to myself to make me feel better. And as I walked out of the store with the bag in my hand, I felt a sense of satisfaction, as if I had accomplished something for myself, even if it was just a foolish purse. But the guilt struck me as soon as I came through the door. Jason sat on the couch, watching television as if nothing was happening. When I walked into the living room, he noticed the bag. "What is that?" His tone was bland, as if he already knew. I froze, unsure how to react. I didn't have a decent excuse. It wasn't something I could hide. It was right there in my grasp, and his expression was immediately one of disappointment and frustration. I attempted to remain calm as if I wasn't about to lose control of my emotions due to guilt. "Jason, it's only a bag. Relax." But I could see how his eyes narrowed, as if he was already adding it to his mental list of everything I'd done wrong. A bag. "Samantha, we are behind on our bills and you bought a purse." I disliked how he said it, like I was an irresponsible youngster, like I had no idea what I was doing. Yes, I messed up, but it wasn't just about the bag. It was about everything. How I felt unnoticed. How we stopped connecting. "I understand, okay? I know what you'll say." My tone was sharp, and I quickly regretted it. I wasn't looking to start a fight, but it seemed like no matter what I did, he was always one step ahead. Always the person with the answers. Always telling me how to repair problems. Jason sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "Samantha, it's not just about the purse. It is about your impulse control and your inability to think things through. You're spending money we don't have, and it's making things worse." I could feel wrath swelling in my chest. "Do you think I don't know that? Do you think I'm out here to make things worse on purpose?" I raised my voice louder than I intended. "You have no concept what it is like, Jason. You simply sit there, watch me do everything, and then judge me when I do something for myself." He stood up from the couch and shook his head. "I am not judging you, Sam. I'm trying to help. But you don't seem to care what happens to us or our family. Stop pretending you're the only one trying," I fired back. "I am doing the best I can. I'm just not as perfect as you. Do you think I don't see what's going on? You think I'm not feeling it? I hesitated, not sure where I was heading with this, but the words continued coming out. I just needed something for me. Okay. Something to help me feel like I wasn't totally failing. Jason was quiet for a while, and I could tell he was trying to digest what I was saying. I could feel the weight of it all between us, but I was not ready to give up yet. I wasn't prepared to acknowledge I was incorrect. I wasn't ready to accept responsibility for the reality that I had made a mistake and caused everything to spin out of control as a result of my own poor decisions. "Why are you continuously doing this?" he inquired, his voice low. "Why do you constantly make it about yourself?" And that was the moment, the one that struck me harder than I wanted, because deep down, I knew he was correct. I had made everything about myself, what I desired, needed, and felt, and that is why we were here. This is why things were going apart. It was entirely my fault, but I just couldn't admit it. Not yet. Not entirely. The guilt came over me in waves, but I wasn't sure how to solve it. I wasn't sure how to quit repeating the same mistakes over and over, so rather than confront it, I shut down. I didn't want to hear what he was saying anymore. "I am not sure what you want from me," I muttered, glancing away from him. "I'm simply trying to get through this disaster." Jason did not answer. Instead, he simply remained there, watching me. It seems like he had given up on attempting to fix me, and part of me wanted to assure him that I wasn't broken. I was simply lost. But I could not find the words. And at that point, I understood I was in over my head. I awoke the following morning, The weight of the discussions hangs over me like a cloud. I couldn't leave. Jason didn't even speak to me as he left for work. I knew he was upset, and I honestly didn't blame him. I despised the tension between us, but it was simpler to escape it than confront what I had done. It was easy to pretend everything was fine and justify my decisions in my own thoughts. After all, I did earn that purse, right? I couldn't stop thinking about how he looked at me when he called. Impulsive, irresponsible. Those comments stayed with me, but I was not ready to realize they were true. Not yet. Not entirely. Not when everything around me seemed to be slipping away. All I wanted was something that let me feel in control of at least one aspect of my life. Was that really wrong? But as the day progressed, I found myself repeating the disagreement in my thoughts. Every time I thought I had a valid explanation for what I did. Another part of me murmured to Sam, "You messed up. You actually did." Despite my best efforts, I couldn't shake it. By the time Jason arrived home, I'd spent hours sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the television. I could feel him standing in the doorway, watching me. At first, neither he nor I said anything. There was a crushing quiet between us, and I felt as if I could not breathe. Jason finally broke the silence. "We need to discuss what's going on, Sam, about the money, about us. I can't continue like this." I felt my stomach drop. I did not want to talk about it. I didn't want to look at him and confront what I knew deep within. My rash decisions were pulling us down. I wasn't sure how to remedy this, and I didn't want to be the one to admit my mistake. It was like giving up a small part of myself, like admitting that I wasn't as in control as I wanted to be. But despite myself, I responded, "What is there to talk about, Jason? You not trust me? Do you think I'm a mess?" "That's not it, Sam," he remarked as he sat down next to me. "It is not about trust. It's about taking responsibility, about doing what's best for us. We must consider our future, particularly our children. I'm not looking for perfection, but I do need to know we're on the same page. I need to know you got it." I wanted to notify him that I received it. I actually did. But the truth is, I didn't. Not entirely. I wasn't sure how to balance things. I wasn't sure how to be the wife, mother, and person I was supposed to be. I felt overwhelmed by my responsibilities, and no one understood. Not even Jason. "I understand," I murmured quietly, but it seemed like a lie. "I know I messed up, but you don't understand either. You are usually so remote. I feel as if I'm stuck carrying everything on my own, and then, when I try to do something for myself, you act as if I am the problem. Jason, I am not the only one to blame here." I could see the frustration on his face, but he remained silent for a long time. Instead, he simply ran his hand through his hair and glanced at the floor. "You're correct," he finally murmured, his tone softer than I expected. "I've been checked out. I've been so concentrated on repairing things that I didn't even notice how you were feeling. And for that, I apologize." He looked up at me, his expression tired. "However, this does not mean you can simply walk out and spend money. We do not have." I could feel the shame rising inside me again, but I fought to hold it in. "Jason, I didn't mean to screw things up. I simply wanted to feel good about something. I wanted to feel like I wasn't failing." His eyes softened slightly, but I could still sense the hurt in them. "I understand how you feel, but we can't keep continuing this way. We have to work this out, Sam." "For real?" "This time." I stared at him for a long time, feeling swept up by everything that had gone wrong, the bag, the money difficulties, and the tension between us. It all felt really overpowering. I did not have the answers, and I despised the sense of not knowing what to do next. "You're right," I finally replied, barely above a whisper. "I've been acting rashly, and it's hurting us. I didn't want to admit that, but I realize it's true." Jason simply nodded, not saying anything else for a time. We sat there in silence, but it wasn't as stifling as before. It was just silence, a calm that made me understand how much I'd messed up, how much I'd been avoiding confronting what I had done. Even as I sat there, I couldn't shake the notion that I hadn't finished, that this would not be the last time I made the same mistakes, and that I would end myself buying something else I didn't need. Maybe I'll act out again, but for the time being, all I could do was sit and reflect on the repercussions of my decisions. I did not feel sorry enough to change. Not yet, but maybe I will eventually. Jason stood up to leave the room, and I watched him depart. And as he did, I felt a familiar pang in my chest, the one that reminded me how broken we both were. Neither of us knew how to solve it. And in that moment, I knew the primary issue wasn't money, it wasn't the bag, the debts, or our failing marriage. The main issue was myself. I sat there in silence, watching Jason go away, feeling the weight of everything sink more into my chest. Maybe he was correct. Perhaps I was the problem. I wasn't sure whether I could fix things, but the prospect of him leaving and everything coming apart as a result of my rash decisions felt like a blow in the gut. I wasn't sure how to quit repeating the same mistakes over and over. I had no idea how to restore the mess I had made with our finances, our relationship, or myself. But I knew this. I did not want to lose him. I didn't want to keep making decisions that would harm us both for the first time in a long time. I began to consider whether I needed to make a significant change, not only for Jason or the kids, but for me. Because otherwise, I had no idea where this was headed, which worried me. But frankly, I couldn't make any promises. Not yet. Not when so much of me remained broken. There were so many habits that I didn't know how to break. So I sat there, waiting for the inevitable repercussions, hoping deep down that things may improve. But I was also aware that everything was now on me, and I wasn't sure if I was up to the task. I didn't deserve to be forgiven, but if I was lucky, I might be able to put things right someday, or perhaps not. Regardless, I had to confront the facts. I was the one who messed things up, and that was the most difficult thing to admit. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.